Welcome, everybody. First of all, everybody can see my screen, right? Yes? All
Yes.
right, cool. And then secondly, while we're waiting, if everybody could put in the chat window your name, where you're from, and then also what breakout room you want. So let me actually put those up now. So we've got 6 different breakouts this time, quite a few. So we've got the Silicon Valley, we have job market, churn, growth engine, customer wants, and money people. So we asked everybody in advance to vote on what they wanted their topic to be. And some of these votes came in super close. They won out by 1 vote. So if you guys really want to have a say in what the topics are for next month, then definitely be sure to vote. I put a bunch of stuff in the chat window at the very top of the chat with a bunch of links for some stuff that I'm going to be going over with all of you in just a moment. But while we're waiting, I figure everybody can put in which group they want to be a part of, their name, where they're from, anything else they want to say. Okay, and then, okay. So then, let's see. I'll come back to that too. Maybe you guys might want to screenshot that if you're trying to decide which group you want to be a part of. I might come back to it, but I want to go over a couple of different housekeeping notes. So take a screenshot of that if needed. All right. Okay, so a couple of things, I want to do just kind of really get started so we're not wasting too much time. A couple of things is, we really want, as I mentioned before, the bookshop is really meant for all of us in the CS community to be able to come together, share our challenges, share our wins while using the customer success economy by Gainsight's Nick Mehta and Allison Pickens as our guidebook, so to speak. So it's always a really good idea to actually buy the book, read the chapters, all of that. So once you have read that chapter, we want to make sure that when we go into those breakouts, you're thinking about the advice that's been given in the book itself, and then have a discussion about that, but then also just have a topic in general about the chosen topic discussion on that chapter. So a couple of things that I really want to do for our community in customer success, in the field of customer success, is I want to promote you guys. I want to get your voices out there, have you be heard, have you seen as an expert in the field. People that are really participating in our field are people that really know their stuff. And so I really want you guys to shine. It's important to me. It's part of my life's purpose, is to be able to contribute to other people's lives. So as you can see here, I want to make sure that you gain as much value as possible. So a couple things that I would suggest. First is, if you haven't done so right now, click on the link that's in the top of the chat window to register for next month's bookshop, and then also promote it to your, to your network, to people that you know. Take a screenshot of our little gallery of people that are participating. Take some screenshots of yourself talking, of other people. This is a time for us to be able to help each other out. Second is, at the top of that window, you can download right now September's takeaway deck and recording that I posted and I emailed all attendees from last month. So make sure, if you haven't gotten that deck from September, go download it right now. And then in about a week's time, we'll be replacing that with October's recording and October's deck. So if there are ideas that I've promoted that you've talked about, or there are screenshots of you talking, use those when you're posting so that you can really let people know that you're an expert in your field and that you're learning, you know, things that you've learned from being a part of this group, you know, that sort of thing. Next is be influential in how it is that we run this bookshop. So be sure to vote for November's topics in that link up at the very top of the chat. It's a bit.ly link. So as I said, voting was really close, sometimes by one vote. So make sure that you vote on what you want those topics to be chosen. Next is during the breakouts, offer ideas, talk about the challenges that you're having, because I include those in that takeaway deck and the recording later. So if ideas that I mention are your ideas, take credit for those when you're sharing with people in your network. If there's something that you really learned from somebody else, promote that person. You know, the more that we can really help each other in this community when people are unemployed or having times, or really taking the time and effort during COVID to really educate themselves, let's help each other out. So after the breakouts, I'm going to be putting you guys in breakouts in a moment, but after those breakouts, I'm going to have you come back to the main session. So share in the chat window, once we all come back as a group, what takeaway that you thought really made a difference for you, something very specific that somebody else could benefit from, because that's what I use to be able to give back to our community. So, you know, show, don't tell your network that you know your stuff. So that's really kind of the main point of all this. And then lastly, before we get started, you know, I know some people are shy, but it would be really great if, you know, those people that are working really hard to promote can show their screen just for a moment and wave hello to the camera so that we can take some screenshots of everybody. Same in your breakouts. You know, this is a time for us to be showing that we know our stuff, okay? So on the count of 3, if you guys wouldn't mind just waving, saying hello, just a quick hi. 1, 2, 3. Okay, great. All right, good deal. I got that.
So you're
awesome.
also giving us a heads up before you take a picture. Thank you for that.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. You can count on it. All right, great. So I'm going to break you up, but before I take you into the breakouts, has everybody chosen their breakout? Have they put the breakout that they want in the chat window?
There are just a couple of people that haven't messaged their selection yet, but we've got a lot of people in groups chapters 3, 4, 5, and 6. So it looks like.
So it looks like those are the people that, those are the topics that people love the most. So, you know, sometimes we've got to roll with the punches. So if there isn't as many for the Silicon Valley chapter 2 and the money people, then Rick and Tiffany, I would ask for you to join one of the other groups and moderate with, you know, Ed, Laura, Debbie, or, you know, myself or Cindy. So if there's a second choice that you guys have other than Silicon Valley and money people, you might want to put that in the chat so that we can get you where you want to be.
All right, I'm just looking for a response from Bobby Cooper and Fred. If you want to just message me, I will place you into the groups.
Great.
You know
And
what?
so
I just barely hopped on. What am I messaging you?
So I'm just asking everybody, you can see my screen. If you can choose one of those 6 breakouts that you want to be a part of, just put it in the chat window for Lauren. So Silicon Valley, job market, churn, growth engine, customer wants, or money people. But it's looking like we might focus on chapter 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we'll have Rick and Tiffany join one of the other groups to moderate, because it seems there's more popularity for chapters 3 through 6. So I think right now we're kind of going through introductions, what we're kind of looking for from this breakout. Is that right?
No.
So yeah, we've got still 3 minutes to do that. Who else needs to share?
I'll go. This is Ron Stam. I know Dana and Tom Hayes in this group from D&B, Dun & Bradstreet. I've been at Dun & Bradstreet a long time. I'm not in probably your traditional customer success role, but my career here has been either in sales or in consulting. I'm currently in a consulting role, and it's very similar to a customer success role, as with sales to some extent. So it's good to understand what our customers expect from us and what we can provide to them. And I've always been very customer-centric in terms of providing services to them in whatever role I was in. So maybe not the same exact position that Dana and Tom had when I was working with them, but in a sense, we all do the same thing to support our companies and customer success.
Yeah, for sure.
And normally I'm in Southern California, but right now I'm hanging out in Maryland.
We're really happy to have you. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Anyone else?
And then who else?
So I'll follow up from Ron. So this is Tom Hayes. So I'm based out of Orange County. Like Ron said, it's a couple familiar faces. I did work with Ron for many years at D&B, and Dana and I shared a customer success manager role at Dun & Bradstreet as well. So I'm actively searching for a role, and customer success has always been a passion. At Dun & Bradstreet, retention was a key focus for us, understanding value for customers, the investments they made with us, and ultimately, securing those renewals, but, ensuring customers were successful personally, departmentally, and organizational wise as well, that we were mapping back to their goals. So the last couple of years, I was in the commercial data space, but more pre-sales, some consulting, and I've just decided to make a commitment to go back to the CSM world and reconnected with Dana, and just taking steps like this, just to network more, to improve my skills, and just get back in the swing of things.
Awesome. You're in the right place, Tom.
Thank you.
And then we've got about 30 more seconds. Did we get to everybody?
Yep.
Oh, good. So then I could share. All right, great. So, my background has been in customer success for the last 6 years. It's all been strictly customer success roles. I've had quite a whirlwind in terms of the job market, which is why I wrote an ebook on the topic. So, I've gone from public to private, private to public, enterprise, pre-revenue SaaS, growth, everything. So I'm looking to see everybody's ideas. We're popping back in now, so we should be leaving here just about now. So let's see if we'll. Or actually, did she fix it? Oh no. Let's. Wonder if she fixed it. Yeah, because it should have just popped us out. Let's see. All right. Well, let's all. Let me see.
I did hit the record button when she popped
Yeah,
out.
so we're definitely recording. So maybe she was able to. Oh, we might be okay. Let's see. We might be okay.
It's recording right now. At least it's
Yeah. Well, she said, oh, here we go. The breakout rooms are still open. Timer was set for 15 minutes. But please continue the discussion. All right. Okay, well, I think we should get down to the nitty gritty of it. I can share my screen, Cindy, because it's just one slide.
Yeah.
For us to have.
So I didn't get a chance to share, Dana, but I thought
please.
Yeah. So my background is actually primarily in business development, sales, and every time when you're in sales, you always work very closely with marketing. I've sold into the aerospace and defense, SaaS, AI SaaS software. Worked for Microsoft channel partner. Worked for an enterprise software company that has more to do with application performance management, for example. And I shifted into the customer success within my past 2 roles, and I've really have fallen in love with customer success. And I think that there's so many opportunities within that space that I decided just to continue my path within the CS. So I share with your Carlos, when you mentioned that you're now went from customer success into sales, and you're not a big fan. I can appreciate. So, but that said, I would encourage you to, while you're in it, learn what you can about account management and sales, because it is definitely, when you have your sales hat on, you're able to also, get a better understanding of your clients. And so if you don't think of it of sales, is that you're identifying what their needs are in order to fulfill, help them reach their ROI. So hang in there while you're in account management, make the best of it. And just, I think that if you're able to show that you're able to do both, then I think your employer hopefully will kind of give you a chance and a choice perhaps to maybe do both. But that said, I'd like to kind of go start the discussion, where mainly I'm just gonna set that up, that the size of the supply and demand, as noted in the book, have flipped. At the time that the book was written, right? There were plenty of opportunities, and it was really the job seekers market. But now, since the pandemic has taken place, it is now the employers market, where there are millions of people that are looking for work. Are you guys seeing still lots of opportunities in CS, do you find? And I guess the question is, how do we know how real those opportunities are? How you hear some of the tricks or that the recruiters do play, where they post positions and in order to collect the resume. So are you finding that there are plenty of opportunities within the CS market that are real? What are you guys seeing?
And also, in addition to that question too, what have you employed? So what have you seen out there, to kind of extend on Cindy's question? What have you seen out there, and what are some of the challenges that you've come across, and then how have you worked to solve them? I think it'll kind of help all of us.
Happy to jump in, just trying to
Great.
keep it short. So I'm looking across the board and listening to all the story. I feel that we all have a few things in common, but the main point we have in common is we are not cookie cutter. We have different experiences. We went through a few industries, few roles. And so in our opinion, we have a lot to bring to the table in terms of knowledge and professional experience. The challenge I am facing, and I think that's what I'm about to say is going to resonate with many people, is the fact that because we're not cookie cutter, when we reach out to recruiters, and when there is when we identify the right spot and we reach out to recruiter or apply online, I feel like within 5 minutes we receive an automated email and say thank you, but no thank you. And after spending a month trying to figure things out, I decided to no longer reach out to recruiters or apply online. My personal strategy here is to identify the sweet spot, a specific industry where I think I can provide value, which is the area I'm covering in my current role at Gartner, which is intelligent supply chain, and really focusing on that. And whether to reach out to the recruiter, I'm working on identifying who is power, who is the decision maker, whether to sell working for a company and selling a product, I am my own product with my own features. I adapt my resume and reach out to Power, the VP of Customer Success, to schedule an informational session. I'm still looking, so I haven't been successful yet doing that, but this is the strategy I put in place. And I have a ton of different format on my resume just to really make it align. One trick I would like to share, which is, again, it hasn't been a success, but I thought it was, that a friend who gave me that. If you're applying online and you cannot adapt your resume in a way that the customer success, that what will resonate with the recruiter, and you have to submit your resume, something naughty, but you can do it, is to put all the keywords you found in white at the bottom of your resume, because essentially you're not gonna, when it's automated, it's not gonna be a human looking through your resume. It's your resume is gonna be scanned, and this machine is gonna automatically capture the resume that includes the keywords. The fun fact is the machine doesn't recognize color. So if your background is white and you put the keyword in white, a human won't be able to see it, but the machine will scan the word and put your resume, and you will pass the first line. Again,
that is brilliant, Martial.
I love
brilliant.
It.
I haven't been successful, so this is just purely theory, but if you can help one person out of 10, that would be great. So
yeah, and
I'm doing
I
that.
I would say probably that's a good idea. And then also using those keywords in the resume, you know, changing wording and, you know, stuff like that. But also, because I think it also determines how many numbers of that keyword that come up in the resume, you know. So I think that's brilliant. What does everybody else think? Any ideas that they have on how to get
Dana,
around it? Yeah.
I'll comment. So I was actually like a marketing manager, and so I'm familiar with search engine optimization, and that's what Bertil is talking about. And that's a very interesting concept of doing, you know, a whited out word search. And I don't know why I just thought about this, but if you think about paid advertising and pay-per-click and so forth, if the company that you are seeking is paying for certain types of words or topics, those might be things that you can somehow find out if they are paying for them, if they show up as the top of the searches. So if you see the keywords that the company is adding, and you can get some of those buzzwords in your cover letter or your resume, that also might be something that could benefit you as you're searching for a job. So think like the employer and what they're looking for, and not just about what your experience is. And that's an interesting concept with the whiting out of the words, but go backwards and say, what is the company doing from a searching perspective to look for candidates that are fitting their bill? And if you can somehow find out how they're paying for their advertising and what's important to them, those keywords could be of value.
I agree, Ron. You've got to do your homework before you apply for the job. And, you know, something where you're using those keywords in your cover letter specifically, in my opinion, I've done, you know, understanding, you know, looking at their, right, we learned this at Dun & Bradstreet. Look at their 401k, you know, look at their, you know, their website, look at the type of advertising they do, like Ron said, and then talk about in your resume why, that you understand that, you know that, and how you can contribute to them and those specific goals. That's a great idea, Ron. Anybody else?
I'll go. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not.
Yeah.
You can? Okay, great. So I my computer froze, and so I had to log off and log back on. But I joined this group specifically because I thought it'd be interesting to, you know, I've caught the customer success bug since about 2015 when I developed my first department at a SaaS company here in San Diego. And I've been at different organizations since then, and I've done hiring at different of those organizations. And a lot of it comes down to, you know, so for example, at one of my jobs, I found a perfect candidate. I interviewed. I thought this person would be amazing, but maybe amazing for a different organization I worked with before, right? Because there might be different expectations of the job. It might be a different type of position. And so it relates to on page 41, where it talks about, you know, how is the CSM, what is a CSM being hired for? Is it for value gaps, delivery, or value expansion? And so being on the side of the interviewee and ensuring that, okay, clearly understanding where the organization is looking to fill that gap. Where are they in terms of their maturity of their own customer success department? Because then that, by you understanding that, that will then allow you to tailor your messaging, tailor your resume, and allow you to, ensure and have the employer feel confident that you are a good fit for either filling a value gap, a value delivery, or a value expansion. So I think because it's not always clear in the job descriptions, and then it sometimes isn't even always clear in the first interview. And so asking those probing questions to figure out how you can then essentially modify your background for what they're looking for is something as somebody that I've interviewed a lot of different folks have learned in my time, but also as going through interviews myself, is something that you really want to extract from those employers, so that you're giving the right type of delivery, that you're providing the background, the experience that you have that's appropriate for what they're looking for. I found that to be quite helpful.
Love it.
Brilliant. Yeah.
It's excellent idea.
It's interesting, I think, because the way you just position it just hit something is in my head is you apply your customer success skills to your job. So whether to talk to your manager will always be your internal client, the one you have to please anyway. And so by showcasing how you handle, you actually essentially showcase during this interview to your hopefully future manager, how you will be handling your client by asking open questions, second, third level, really understanding what keeps him or her awake at night, and essentially doing your job, essentially.
Yeah.
And to take it one step further, you mentioned, you think of like the ideal customer profile, or you want that mutual fit. So the likelihood of the customer is going to be a long-lasting customer and reduce, there won't ideally not churn later on down the road, and having that mutual fit. And I have the analogy that you can apply that to almost anything in life, whether it's a relationship, a personal relationship, or it's an employee, relationship. And I always stress that as well, as I want to make sure that this is a good fit for both parties, because if, the dynamic is, not aligned, then there'll be churn, right? In one way or the other. So I try to bring up that analogy as well, which has been pretty good response out of that.
Yeah. Well, I have to give a shameless plug about exactly how I've written my ebook. It is taking it's taking a customer journey and applying it to your employment journey, and going from, a CSM all the way to a CCO, and all of the maturity that you have to have as you go up the chain, and think of your employer as your customer. Your employer, they're not there to give you a job and pay you a paycheck. They hired you to deliver an outcome for them. So that was right on, Alan. Yep. I think that's great. Other people, ideas, things that they've done?
Yeah, I can go. For me, for a couple of the challenges I think I've had is because of my background, because of my background, I haven't done a lot of applying online, probably similar to Bert Thiel. I think he hasn't, or maybe he is doing more online now with the white space. But so I've been trying to do it two ways. One is through info interviews. The issue or challenge I've run across there as well, it's a numbers game. So, you spend a lot of time researching companies, reaching out to people, drafting a really thought out message or email. And then you're just like, wow, I really put a lot of thought into that. It wasn't like I'm begging for a job or, just want to talk, and you don't hear back. Obviously, it's great when you do hear back and are able to have a discussion with someone. The challenge, so that's one challenge, is just the numbers game aspect of it, and the time commitment. The other end of it is I've had a couple really good, I thought, one was an interview, one was an info interview for a really good company. But when I went to apply the next day, the position was no longer there. The girl was amazing. She really loved our conversation. So she's like, well, I'll definitely put you in as a referral in our network, so when a position comes up. So that's good in a sense, but from a time perspective, I don't know when that next position will open up. And then I did have an interview with, say, like a recruiter. She's like, yeah, I would love to, we've been interviewing for this. I would love to present you the hiring manager. But when she got back to me 3 days later, she's like, we actually just put an offer out, or the hiring manager put an offer out like 2 days before. The good news is they are hiring again. And so I'm interviewing next week in the second round. But so I guess one of the challenges doing it through the informational interview, from that angle, which a lot of people recommend, it's time consuming, and it's, you have to align I guess, all the pieces of the puzzle together to when that position is actually open. And then secondly, I would say kind of back to the original point of job posting. So a lot of it is coming about because maybe I see an interesting position and I want to start inquiring about it with some people that work there. But yeah, I think the difficult part of there is knowing on LinkedIn or, if that position is still active. So mostly I will look on their website, but even if you look on their website, sometimes you're just not sure if it's an active position or if it's just been lingering for a few extra months before they've had time to take it off. So there are a couple of the challenges. I mean, obviously there's more as well, but those are a couple I think that are, for me, kind of interesting.
Those are some great ones. I have some advice, but I need to stop talking. All of you guys, do you have any advice for him? One is, he's out there putting the time and effort and being able to put something very custom together about an organization, and then the position is gone. Another one was, it's available and then it's not. It's like all this work and effort. So I have some ideas on that. Anybody else have some thoughts?
I could take a stab at this. So, I think that, understanding and looking at how long the job has been open for in general, right? And I think LinkedIn has a really good feature where it says, it lets you know if it's just been, the job posting has just been released, but then you can also look and see, okay, well, it's been 28 days as an example. In my, experience on both ends, if the position's been posted for 28 days, just my gut intuition is that they either haven't found the right person yet, and there's a challenge there trying to find somebody, or they're towards the end of finding somebody or a couple people. So what I'm trying to say is more people are along that funnel. And so if you're just kind of entering that picture, the reality is, for my opinion, is that the recruitment team will be focused on the folks who are in that final stage, which might be difficult, right? But with that being said, I think it still is worth applying, right? Because those candidates that might be towards the end of that interview process, who knows, none of those might have worked out and they'll have to start back from scratch. Or maybe something will happen where they'll start a couple weeks later, and then for some reason it doesn't work out, they'll have to go back to the drawing board. So that's one thing, is kind of paying attention to how long the job's been posted for. And this may have been brought up before, but it's doing a little bit of research on LinkedIn and finding out who the hiring manager might be, who the talent, it's either hiring manager or recruiting or talent specialist, or, understanding and doing a little digging on who that person is, who's responsible, and then sending them a note and stand out and why you are unique for that position and how you can stand out. For example, maybe there's an organization that produces SaaS and hardware, and you have both, right? Experience in both areas, and you want to stress that, because then that will narrow the folks that might be qualified for that role, and you'll get their attention. So there's just some things that I would recommend.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
One thing, Fred, is when, from personal experience, my current role at Gartner, the way I was able to get in was by looking at the overall, the number of jobs available within this organization, because I always felt that when there is a job posting, it's like real estate. When you see that there is an opportunity, it's usually sold and it's purely for marketing. We're growing, we're booming. This is what we can do. And as Alan said, off and on is just here, and there is already have applicant. I will recommend still to, and again, I'm in the same process, but this is how I secure my current role at Gartner, is to work with Power. Recruiter I don't have a high, I'm sorry for if there are any recruiters on the call, but I don't have a high esteem on recruiters simply because it's just, they're looking for copy paste, like something they need, something they can say, and then we bring up. I will definitely reach out to, when you see many, that's what I'm doing, many opportunities, reach out to the head of customer success, said, I'm really interested in that space, that's what I'm doing. Would love to schedule a time. Do you have 20 minutes next week to have a conversation? Introduce yourself, and if there is a link, then the head of customer success will say, hey, you know what, it's not posted, but let me introduce you to our recruiter, and start the conversation, and then you start the I'm not saying you have the job, but you start the conversation, and that's what I'm doing just in my process.
Yeah, Bertil is very, very creative in that, you know. And Fred, you've done it too. Both of you guys have reached out to me and, you know, just asked for advice. You're not asking for jobs. You know, if you're talking to people in the industry that you feel are well connected in the industry that you want to be in, or you see a job and they're connected to you, you know, reach out to them and just say, hey, you know, I want to pick your brain. You seem to know what you're doing. I'm interested in this company, but really what you think matters to them. You know, that's kind of one thing, and you guys are doing that exceptionally, in my opinion. And then another is, you know, instead of Fred, like we were just talking about, instead of just having to spend all that time in creating something custom, you should still absolutely do it. But if you see 250, 400 people applying for a job, it's been, okay, let's see, we've got, oh yeah, we're going to be coming out of this, I think any second now.
Yes.
And yeah, so they may pop us out, but real quick, if they don't, I want to put this one thing out there that you know, as you had said, reach out to those recruiters on LinkedIn or somebody within that organization and say, hey, I know what your goals and strategies are this year. They are to X, Y, and Z. This is how I plan on helping you. Something simple, you know, don't go into but if you're going to the head of customer success at that company and saying, I know you guys are struggling based on what the the CEO is telling us in the market, this is how I can help you. You know, there's a lot of things like that that you can do as well.
Yeah, and I was also an account manager, so I was responsible for renewals. So, you know, I would just say the salesperson, these need to be in alignment with the compensation structure, or you're fighting a losing battle. Because as salespeople, we are trained like a dog, like on a dog whistle. That we look at that comp structure, and we figure out how we're going to make the most money. We don't solely do that, but it's pretty high up there, and that's an important piece just from a sales side. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time having salespeople act as in conjunction and in concert with what you're trying to accomplish. I guess those are the pieces that I would add.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, that's good perspective. Account management and selling, you know, we all look at this a little bit differently. Rick, how about you?
Yeah, well, I kind of wanted to piggyback off of what the first gentleman said. I forgot your name, forgot who was speaking. But I would like to know who else has had experience with logo retention rate. To me, at least, it seems like something that is maybe a new measurement stick, just in terms of you know how we're measuring churn and revenue and such. So I would actually like to just kind of hear different perspectives. And I apologize if that might have been brought up. I did leave to come back in just to hit the record button.
Thanks, Rick.
Sure.
Anybody want to comment on that?
So, I mean, yeah, I guess I can talk to it a little bit. So when I look at logo retention, I always like to look at revenue retention and logo retention side by side, because it's really a measure of, you know, logo retention, we would never report up to the board, but we use it operationally to understand where we need to prioritize our efforts as a CS organization. So I just joined, just kind of, I guess, well, I guess a little bit of background about myself. I actually don't even live in, this is like the LA chapter, right? Los Angeles chapter, Pulse Local. I actually live in Utah, and but I just joined a company in LA, so I'm just kind of starting to build the network out there. Company called Tapcart, and sorry, I'm totally spacing my train of thought here. Anyway, going back to logo retention, we noticed there's different segments throughout like our SMB, mid-market, enterprise space where the revenue retention is pretty much the same. So coming into the company, it's a very new company, and they realize like between the three segments, revenue retention is kind of the same. However, when we dive into like the logo retention, we see that there's the logo retention in the enterprise space is actually very evenly churned throughout the customer life cycle. But when you look at logo retention in the SMB space, it's all happening during that first like 45-day window. So it's actually, even though when you look at the revenue as a whole, every segment looks like they're churning about the same rate. So there is no prioritization of efforts and focus on any area. But when we look at that logo retention, like where are they actually churning in the journey? There's more people churning up front out of the SMB space. So it just allows us to understand like how to prioritize our operations and where to build our plays. It just gives you a little bit more insight into what the customers are doing, right? On the other hand, you know, flipping it to revenue, it's good to look at revenue churn that's not logo churn, right? Like downgrades, you know what I mean? It's good to have both lenses on it so you can understand what do you need to do, right? Is it an implementation problem? Is it a downgrade problem? Is it an upgrade problem? Is it an actual like ROI problem? Like I spoke at the last Pulse event for Gainsight, and I actually made this comment to, and I think it pissed a lot of people off, but I talked about like CSMs. I think sometimes we take too much, we give ourselves too much credit for the relationship, right? Relationship's good, but like, quite frankly, what we need to do is we need to focus our efforts around like what the data is telling us, why customers are successful and why customers are not successful. So I think by benchmarking each one of these metrics and looking at them holistically, it kind of lets you know where you need to focus your efforts.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Bobby. A question for all of you, and we'll do a show of hands on this one. Good that you all have your cameras on. So show of hands, how many of you have your performance or the performance of your teammates evaluated or compensated based upon these metrics? Raise your hand if that's the case.
Yeah.
Couple, okay. So how important is it to have accurate numbers? Pretty accurate, kind of, sort of? Yeah. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here from Gainsight or our authors here, but does anybody see any funky things with these metrics? Anybody see anything wrong with these metrics?
Well, the type 5, the non-renewals, it's simply stating end of period versus beginning of period, but there's other calculations that go in there from like your end of period is not counting new sale revenue. It's not counting upgrade revenue to actually get that correct calculation. There's going to be certain elements that you're going to need to take out of that to get an actual retention rate based on just beginning dollars and ending dollars.
So maybe some terms are missing there. Anybody else see anything funky in these? Anybody notice anything? Go ahead. Go ahead, Dan.
I'm the least educated on this of all, so I shouldn't even be speaking. But I just think in general, the more ways you can look at this, the better, even if they conflict in some way, because they all tell a different story. Because I've had times where I've hit my number, just crushed it. Because when I had a number, I had some new business, I had some existing business, I had a renewal and some growth and that sort of thing. When you put it all together, it can look really great. But when you start to pull it apart, you realize that one part was really great and one part wasn't. And that's just my individual territory. But if you add them all up, I suspect there's similar type of anomalies that you want to make sure that you understand what happened. And I was just going to pull up, I saw something the other day that grabbed my attention. it was a company called Fastly. It said, this is from Market Day. The headline was, Fastly stock plunges more than 25% after TikTok fails to use its software as much as anticipated. Their stock dropped 25% because one of their clients didn't use their solution as much as they thought they would. So I mean, it has huge impacts on the company. And I actually, part of why I'm here also is I'm fascinated with how things seem to be evolving in the customer success area, because when I started working with client services people, that's what they call themselves then, it was really different. And now I can see where you all are looking at things like this. It's more, it's really vital to the company. And that's why I think the more ways you can look at it to get as clear a picture as you can, the better off you'll know how to help the company get to ultimately what it's after, which is in the end, money, jobs, all those things that we all want to have. Well, most of us. So.
Good point. Good point.
I have been seeing a handful of companies that are moving to more group, group retention rates versus like individual retention rates. Has anyone else seen this as like kind of a shift in the market? Yeah. Okay.
So group, Ty, you mean rather than have individual performance metrics, you look at it as a process across the team?
Yeah. So I've seen people do it across the team, and I'm also starting to see people do it across other silos. So like engineering, right? Professional services, which is really interesting. Surprisingly, when you put, retention rate on engineering, they're incredibly responsive. Who knew? Yeah, right. Opposed to, in customer success, we tend to just be altruistic in general, right? At least in my experience. But yeah, just wondering if other people are seeing kind of just turn into group metrics as well.
The part you mentioned about engineering sounded funny to me at first, but if they're designing the product, there's ways to design that product where you're more likely to get renewals. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense in that regard. I guess as long as there's a logic behind it, I think that's great. Why shouldn't they have responsibility? It's in the best interest of everybody in the company to have the revenue going northerly direction, right?
Absolutely.
I think this is a really good segue to go into the other major theme, the other major piece of content in this particular chapter. And I'm glad, Ty, you and Dan talked about this whole notion of, churn is not a customer success problem. It's an enterprise-wide problem. And they make that point in this chapter. And one of the things they talk about is churn reasons and what they call proximate issues, or things that are outside our control. And then what they call root causes, right? So what is it internally that influences that? And these were some of the examples that they shared in this chapter. So a question for you folks is on this particular aspect of the chapter, how many of you are, maybe how are you collecting churn reasons right now? Are you collecting churn reasons right now? How about we start with you, Brianna? I know you're new at this stuff, but is that something you have on the roadmap, or have you started to look at that?
Sure, absolutely. So we've definitely done deep dive cases. My company's current issue is failure to launch, for sure. We have a sales team that's on the ground. They don't know our product. I mean, they couldn't tell you what our product does from a day-to-day perspective, which means we're ending up with a lot of false promises and unmanageable expectations. They get into implementation and there's a different set of problems there that come out of that. So we're really examining from a failure to launch perspective and where we're seeing that failure happen. So that tends to be where we've really been situated right now, looking at churn reasons and then expanding that for our legacy clients and what that looks like if they have been with the company for a long time and where that started to downturn over time.
Well, that's a really good place to start, right? Drill down into that, try to figure out what's going on, asking the big why question, right? Yeah. So how about you, Rick? How are you using churn reasons?
Well, that's a very good question. I actually just joined my organization about a month ago.
Congrats.
So I'm very new. I am still kind of grasping how we actually, I guess, forecast and record that information. But I do know at my previous company, we did report out information on a weekly basis. And if we did have clients that were at risk, we would typically, of course, put them into categories similar to what we have here. So are they things that are within our control versus what isn't in our control? And even things that are outside of our control, we just try to list out, okay, are there some things that we can do to at least try to preserve the customer if it makes sense? And then if there are, some known risks that affect whether or not that client's going to stay on the books, what can we do to actually just try to stave off that churn? But yeah, it was a weekly report out. I'd report to my manager, and then of course that would be shared in those leadership meetings, and then we would just try to enact, a strategic plan to try to retain those customers.
Sounds good. How about you, Bobby? Are you using churn reasons in your work?
Yeah. So I have a kind of a standard methodology of like classifying churn reasons. I think they're pretty standard, like with a churn reason and then a sub reason code. Typically that first churn reason I have pointed back to a department, and it's all about driving change, right? Like what can we learn from this churn, and who needs to know this information to drive change to prevent future churn? So usually it'll go like the churn reason is, like from implementation, support, sales, products, or economical reasons, which are a little bit more uncontrollables. And then when you go down to that sub reason, it gets down to like the nitty gritty, like when in terms of if it was a product issue, like what specific issue was it? Was it a bug, an enhancement, a rollout, something that went bad? If it was a sales issue, was it like a misunderstood pricing? Was it a timing issue? Was it a misunderstood functionality or something like that? If it was, and such, and then usually leaving like an open-ended description where they can, the CSM can go in there and fill out like more information. I am experiencing an issue that I'm still trying to wrap my head around with my new organization. And that is that we have about 50% of our sales comes through an organic pipeline. They never talk to a sales rep. They go in and self-sign on themselves. That being said, they also churn themselves without talking to anybody. And so it's capturing this data without human interaction. And, a lot of it we'll see, we are making some assumptions based on time, right? Like we'll have in a month 1,000 new signups on our really basic self-service plan, but then 700 of those signups will churn within the first 24 hours. Meaning they basically went and subscribed, poked around, and then unsubscribed. But then we notice that same person will come back and resubscribe like 3 or 4 times during the month, and then just unsubscribe. So it's trying to grab that data early on about like what is it that would take a customer to stick, right? And it's really a collaboration between myself and our VP of sales trying to solve this problem, because it's so early in the pipeline that it's really at that acquisition stage as well. So
yeah, so it's interesting. You've got 2 flavors of that. You kind of putting your own feedback in the CRM, and then also customers themselves trying to capture some of those churn reasons from them. Ty, how about you? What are you doing with churn reasons right now?
Nothing. Just because I'm not working. So the last company I was at was actually an acquisition company, and I don't know if you guys have ever been in this situation, but they genuinely don't care about churn. They care about, they've already made their money, so CSMs are really there to just pull every last dollar they can out. Has anyone worked in these kind of scenarios? Oh, it's fascinating. So they actively don't care about churn. It's a very weird scenario. So.
Okay, and over to you, Dan. Let's hear from you.
Well, I would just say that salespeople are guilty of raising expectations during sales. That's been known to happen. A lot of times that is less likely to happen if the client success manager is right there along with them. At some point in the process, that typically just depends on a good relationship between the two, or a salesperson will find a way to not have that person on there. And it's not that we're all evil, it's just that we are under a lot of pressure. If you haven't been a salesperson, you don't understand that, but and it's not just us. Sometimes your manager will nudge you into trying to do the wrong thing, and it's I have stood up to my manager before. It's very uncomfortable. If it's done right, you can get away with it. I did, but too many times you don't get away with it, and so that's a real thing. The things that was interesting to me, the proximate issues outside of our control. And I think salespeople are a little bit under your control, like I just said. But when you look at like sponsor change, you can't control. M&A, you can't control. Competition, you can react to though. So I would say that is, you can't control what your competition does, but you can you can try to get ahead of them. You can try to, especially get ahead of them in some critical parts of the solution. And if you are behind them, you can close that gap rather fast, or you can close it slow, and that will all impact in a big way. Price is, I guess, easy unless you have bad operating expenses, and it's really hard. So I think the competition one's the one I maybe push back on and wonder if that's really it's outside of the control of client success, but it's not outside the control of the company. It's very much in control of the company. And if you really have a problem with your product, meaning it isn't fulfilling the need, won't matter how good a client success you have, salespeople, whatever, it's going to be an ugly situation. You see companies all the time that bad service even, and if their product's good enough, doesn't really matter. People want it, they want it. So those are my thoughts.
Really good point. Bobby had said that there's some mechanisms in place to try to get this data directly from customers, and then there's Bobby also mentioned, I think some of the other folks did as well, is to categorize that internally in your own CRM. The book talks about that as well. What are your thoughts on the best source for that? Is it internal, or is it the customers themselves telling us what the real reasons were? Any thoughts on that?
I do. Only because I was, forget how I was interacting with this woman. This is somewhere online. But she would do post, after the client left, and she was outside the company, she was an outside resource, she would go in and have conversations with them. And I'll tell you what, it's nothing like getting it from the horse's mouth. And it's not even like your CSM folks or your salesperson are trying to mislead you. It's just you interpret things, and it's really what I think that client thought doesn't matter. It matters what that person really thought and what they experienced. And this woman seemed particularly like she'd be good at it. It's probably because she just does it frequently. She gets to ask the right questions and follow-up questions. She had a whole process down. It was quite impressive. And I would say that's the biggest thing. My 2 cents on that. So,
Dan, do you ever get customer success involved in like closing deals in order to ask those right questions from the top of the pipeline?
Have I?
Yeah.
No. And I'll tell you why, just so you understand a salesperson's perspective, because I'm trying to understand your all perspective too. And I get some of it, but I know I don't get others. As the sale gets closer, if you've maybe invested 6 months in a deal, I don't want anybody in there with me. And that's the truth. I don't want a soul in there, because I've had instances where, and he wasn't a CSM person. He was a very hop in the organization, and he went in there and he effectively pushed my deal out 3 months, which meant it went to the next calendar year, which was the same as the fiscal year. And I was livid. I got back to the car. He said, "What did I do?" I was like, "I'm not talking. I'm better off not talking." And it can happen. It's not like he was a jerk or stupid. He was very bright. It's just it's like elements of CSM. I could probably make a big error there and send it in a bad direction. And you get sensitivities about different things in different situations. And we're in those situations all the time. And you bring somebody in very late in the process. Oof. I did have one CSM that we were really close. I would do it with her in a heartbeat. But we almost knew what each other were going to say before we said it. And it just was like, there was a chemistry there that was very healthy, and she was super smart. And her husband happened to be a salesperson too. That might have had something to do with it as well.
Yeah, you don't want people to say something that'll torpedo a deal. They may be totally honest, but not know the context. Yeah.
Never intentional, for sure.
Right. Yeah. So we only have about 5 minutes left here, if my clock is right. But I do want to make sure we capture a couple of takeaways from this. Maybe what you paid attention to, maybe something that resonated with you, maybe starting back here. we talked about these metrics and the use of these metrics. Anybody have any takeaways from the short time we spent on this?
I mean, I have a better understanding of how and when to use logo retention rates and what people are using them for, since that wasn't really covered in the book. That was certainly helpful.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Ty. I think there's some good perspectives on that. Any other takeaways here?
Yeah, I would say for me, not one of these types will do. You certainly do have to kind of take a more holistic approach to really just get meaningful data.
Yeah, every one of them has their own idiosyncrasies, and understanding what they are, what they mean, what they don't mean is a big deal. What about here? What about some takeaways here?
I do want to also, I really do agree with what Dan said in terms of competition. Depending on how you look at it, it certainly can be well within our control, specifically from a company-wide perspective. So that was another great takeaway. Great call out.
Yeah.
Another thing I'll mention, I'm not sure if it's on this area, and I think it was Bobby who said this, but it might not have been, was the difference between SMB and enterprise and how they behave differently. I found that pretty fascinating, because you're definitely right. I mean, different segments of your customer population, they're going to be different in so many ways, and the more you can understand that, the more you can treat them appropriately to minimize the churn.
Yeah. And like my thought on this slide here is quite frankly, I don't know, like I think there's a lot of things I think that's a big list of things that are considered outside of CSM's control that I 100% disagree with. Everything is within the CSM's control, right? The win rate is going to be different between the two. Like mergers and acquisitions, I save these all the time, but what it is a different play. This is 100% a play that's strictly dependent on the relationship that the CS department has with the sales team, right? The CS team already has a relationship with one party. Well, what happened is they're just being brought into another party. You need to get the freaking AE in there with you and tag team a whole brand new sale. And so I guess that was my, comment, maybe like feedback to like Brianna, if you're just starting your team and you're saying you're seeing these things, the first place you need to start is building that relationship with your sales executives, with your sales leaders, because right now, if you don't have a customer success team right now, the people that know your customers the best are the sales team, and building that relationship is so crucial to the success of any organization. Same thing with competition. Every one of these sales guys are having phone calls, and it's competition related, right? Usually they're the competition going in, so they know those conversations. So if we have problems with competition coming to our customers, build that relationship, work as one team. And honestly, I think all of these things are within the control. Same thing with the sponsorship change. That just goes back to your proactive efforts, right? If you have a new sponsor, thing is, you can't say it's outside your control, because these things happen all the time. That's just another excuse to fail. If a sponsor changes, that just means you need to double down proactive activities to get in there and build a relationship with the new sponsor and make sure that they understand your role in their organization. So, yeah, sorry, I'm the negative Nancy on this slide.
and then go where that sponsor went, whatever company they went to, and you get them as a client there for sure. But the point, and Bobby, I don't know if you meant this or not, but when you said the sales executive, you might want to go up the chain, not just to an AE or an AM, but you might want to really, the relationships are key. I mean, you can get a lot done. As a matter of fact, you might be able to talk to my boss more effectively than me, because he's not your boss or she's not your boss.
Yep.
So it can be worked. If you work the relationships, that is really critical in everything we do, but maybe more so in this scenario.
Very good. We might have time for one more thing. I wanted to talk about this last column. We haven't really talked too much about this, the notion of root causes. And these are the examples I had in the book. When you look at those, do those to you look like root causes? Is that what you would call a root cause? You're kind of shaking your head there, Ty. What do you think?
I don't know if they're root cause. I don't know. All of those seem to me like problems within the process that need to be addressed, right?
Yeah, they seem like symptoms, don't they? Yeah, one of the things that when I was reading these, I was thinking, where's the why question here, right? So product need doesn't fit the customer need. I would follow up and say, well, why? Why is it that that doesn't fit? And that might take you down a path to say, well, you know, it may be because we didn't scope it correctly. It may be, you know, to Brianna's point, maybe we didn't sell it correctly. Maybe the customer didn't articulate it correctly. You know, there's probably some more why questions that may be associated with that. How do you right now, how do you go about and dig down deep? You know, Brianna, you talked about this. What's your method to kind of get down to what's really driving this?
Sure. I think something interesting you had asked earlier is, can it come from an internal or an external source? And I think this last column is something a CSM team should be able to identify and be able to find it early on, and probably before anybody else in the organization would have enough detail to get there. And I think that your external and internal factors together are going to be what drive how you address these points. But also all of these points to me look like something that a CSM team should be able to address before the churn ever happens. I don't want to put this on my client after they've left the company and they no longer have a contract with us. I want to know this 6 months before renewal, because it's something that I think is savable as long as you have your finger on the pulse and you have it on early.
That's a really good point. Yeah. And really digging deep, asking why. You know, there's a method called the 5 whys. You may have heard about that before, is you just keep asking why. And usually around when you ask why 5 times, you're at the nub of it. You know, you're really at the root. And a couple of these, you know, product has had a low adoption rate early on. That begs the question why, right? Why was that adoption rate so low? Well, it was because the customer didn't know how to use the product. Well, why didn't the customer know how to use the product? Well, because we didn't, you know, they never made time for doing the training. Well, why didn't they make time for doing the training? Well, because it wasn't important for them. Well, why wasn't it important for them, right? So then you kind of, you get to it and say, oh, well, their boss never told them it was important. So they never made time. So it sounds like a solution is for us to really get their management sponsorship on board and do some change management and getting people to be engaged in the process before we try to train them. Aha, now we can go fix that problem, right?
And that the why, we had 3 whys in our technique. Must have been better than you guys. No, we did that, and it was amazing how much came out. It was really shocking. If you just sat and waited for them to answer instead of tried to answer for them. So I think that's a great technique, and yeah, it's easy to remember.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of these run into the person who signed the contract and the team that implements it are often, they have different goals, different objectives, different solutions that they're looking to solve for. And when we don't do that due discovery, when we move over to the actual implementation team, a lot of times we miss all of these. And I see that pretty commonly.
There's one other thing that I see in here. Just because product adoption isn't good doesn't mean that the ROI isn't good. I've had clients where their adoption was poor, but the ones who did take hold, the value was high enough to pay for the others. So that's something that I would maybe add there. Just ROI takes care of everything. Unless you want to lose money, if the ROI is good, they're losing money if they don't retain it.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and making that case and making sure you can prove it, right? After you implement it and show them, you know. And I agree with you. You know, usage isn't always the indicator. A lot of times it is, you know, if you have broad-based behavioral change and they've changed the process, then you will see that, you know, the process will improve, the results will improve, the ROI is there. But it's not always tied to that. To your point, Dan, correct. I mean, maybe there's an insight that they get that they never would have gotten, right? Well, with that, you can see the ticker here. It looks like we're running out of time. Thank you all so much for the conversation. I learned some things, and I guess I'll take a couple of these nuggets back to the group. Wish you all the best.
topics that we're really focusing on are those that are part of Chapter 5. I'm not a crazy moderator, so if we want to go slightly off into other things, that's totally fine. But basically, the kind of key things that we'll chat about today are successful versus unsuccessful tactics for driving expansion, new logos, and renewals. So just to begin with, we pulled out this quote from the book, which we felt was really relevant. Successful customers, as we know from reading this chapter, are the start and the end of the pipe. So when you make a customer successful, you've really created at least 3 new leads, right? And one other quote that I saw when I was kind of coming back through the chapter is also way less costly than, it's way less costly to, renew a customer as opposed to bringing in a new customer. So just to start with then, what are some of the tactics that you have used or heard of or hope to try that really help to drive expansion, new logos, and renewals? And anyone who has ideas is welcome to begin. Any ideas?
I'll jump in to start just to get it started. I came into Pipedrive earlier this year in March, and to start with, we have 94,000 customers, so that's there's a beginning of a challenge. And historically, we only went after 3% of that customer base that represents over 30% of revenues. So that's how customer success was set up when I arrived. We now own every single customer in regards to the relationship, because I think it's the right thing to do, is a responsible thing to do, and our customers deserve it. So some of the things, there's a whole ton of stuff that we've done thereafter in regards to the team, and et cetera. One of the first things we did is started to go towards just referrals. And so the Helix model was obviously something very interesting, and just to start to do a number of different things. We can't build this whole thing by ourselves in CS. So started to partner with marketing to build out more collateral. So if marketing creates a piece of collateral that can be used both for new potential customers, as well as customers that are already in our bucket but aren't engaged with customer success, don't know what it is, haven't been engaged in the past, are new to a SaaS product in their wheelhouse, which a lot of our customers, they're very low MRR base there. So they're trying to knock out a bunch of things at once. So getting customer referral, which is part of the marketing collateral that sales can use as a lead, instead of, they're busy trying to sell product. They don't really care about customer success because we have a very strong dividing line, or at least historically have. And so trying to build out a referral base for them, collateral for marketing, and have our customers sing our praise for us. So try to hit a lot of things at once. So that's one tactic, and one thing that from this chapter that really stuck with me that I've latched on to.
I think so too. I completely agree with that. That's great that having customers kind of sell for you, right? Or do those referrals for you. I think that's a really strong thing. And has anyone else had experience with that? Have you guys used any tactics that are similar? I also love the double dipping, right? So Jeff, when you mentioned being able to have marketing put something out that works for sales, but wow, if it also helps to drive that customer success and the renewals, I think that's great.
So this is Cindy. One thing I'll add, I've been in my role about 6 months as well, so not a terribly long time, but I come from more the sales background. And so one of the things that we're doing right now is driving a user group that's going to be a virtual, obviously we'll do product roadmaps and things like that, but we've invited both our existing clients and also prospects kind of to latch on. I think it was Jeff that was speaking, to have some of our existing clients talk about how they're using the product, how they've, adapted usage, right, this year specifically, with people needing to, pick up products differently, curbside versus going into stores and things like that. So just kind of showcasing some of the existing clients, what they've done to be creative, and then bringing that to some of the new prospects that will attend.
That's great. Can you, Cindy, on that group, is it something that you guys, so you said you host it virtually, is it something you guys have regular meetings? Is it like a platform where people can converse? What's the format of that?
Yeah, I guess the team usually does this regionally and in person. And since, you know, that's not really feasible right now, we decided to do a North America level group and invite both the technical users of our product as well as some of the business users, since they can, you know, we don't have a restriction on room size or anything like that. So we're broadening the scope of it a little bit this time.
That's great. That's
So
fantastic.
one of the things that Daisy over here, one of the things that I had looked into and, you know, still kind of looking into is doing webinars, you know, maybe showcasing a feature that isn't used as much, you know, how to use it, some use cases and things like that. One of the things I wasn't sure about is if, like, we're inviting, you know, our user base. We have a lot of state agencies that have, you know, confidential things and things like that. And I don't know how that works in terms of whether they can attend, or, you know, if there's some things to consider from that point of view. If anybody has experience with webinars and things like that with their product.
Yeah, we did. So what we did recently is more of a summit for our technology as well. So our technology is data lake. So we preach data lake technology, where the market has been using data warehouse. So we call the users and actually general industry leaders, thought leaders, to come and talk about it in general. So a lot of it is pre-recorded, but they were done over 2 days. So it's organically, you know, we're not pushing anybody to say Qbol, but they talk about the use cases and say how our product fits in, how they benefited, discuss the use case in detail. So that helps market us really effectively.
That's great. Has anyone else done or explored with webinars versus doing the summits? I like the idea of a summit. I feel like there are so many webinars right now, but at the same time, if it's targeted to, you know, to solving things for people, I think that's appealing.
Yeah, webinars or Ask Me Anythings or podcasts or whatever we're gonna bludgeon each other with electronically. Well, we did HV. We did for our high value customers, which are a few thousand. We did webinars that they were invited to, so just as a preferential kind of treatment. We recorded them, so we did a whole cadence with email campaign around it. They were the deeper, more technical they got, the more responsive we got from. So we had a PM or project manager on it with a customer success manager who kind of moderated and hosted. Those are pretty popular. They've now been cannibalized by marketing because we were doing them in house. So that's all good. I would say, you know, we've got an outrageous customer base. There's no way we and support could ever support all of them ourselves. So we do have community that was launched earlier this year. We have an academy, which is pure videos. We have, of course, support. We've got a knowledge base. So as much self-enablement as we can drive is really however we're going to be successful. Our company is still sales-led and still very siloed. So trying to impact to product-led growth from within is really the next challenge. And so that's where we're going next with all this. Which is going to be has to come from above, has to come from the C-level. It has to be a cultural change. So that's another whole challenge that maybe we'll get Nick to talk to our guys about. We'll see.
Yeah, just to add, Jeff, on the high growth or the high volume, high dollar amount, I guess is what you said. High value clients. One of the things that we've been doing is we built a retention squad to monitor usage of the highest value clients, and then if we see those starting to drop, obviously we'll pull together the sales organization along with technical and say, okay, why might they be dropping, and put together targeted plans specifically for those high value clients. I think where we're trying to get to next is more a no touch digital response to clients that are lower value but higher volume, of like more clients basically that have smaller footprint with us, but getting to them in a digital way to grow their footprint. So we're looking at building out like a client journey map. Like, you know, you buy product number one at day one, and then 60 days from then, here's what the checkpoints should be. And, you know, if all the goals are met, then by 6 months, you should be ready for product number two. And then in 12 months from then, you should be ready to renew and also add product number three. So kind of trying to build a journey map of, you know, the life cycle. We're trying to use the Gain site, some of the journey mapping that they have online to model some of that.
I love the title of that, by the way. Retention Squad is a great, you know, because it makes it fun, but it also shows the value of being able to come in and say, hey, we need to touch these customers, like you said, at those particular points to make sure that they're reaching those goals for expansion. That's great.
Yeah, it's just a scrappy group of people get on the phone, basically.
I love it. I love it. I might have to use something like Squad for
yeah.
as well too. Great. I'm curious. I mean, you know, definitely let's keep going. If there are additional tactics, I think there's so many fun tactics, right, that we can chat about. Sorry, got a message on. We're trying to still figure out the recording. I think we're getting there, but I'm also curious. So in some of these tactics that you guys have mentioned, when it comes to, you know, I love the idea of Jeff. You mentioned the preferential treatment. Are there unique learnings that you guys have gotten from those, or unique things that have happened in those types of things that you're doing where you've seen, for example, new logos? You know, Cindy, you talked a bit about how you're getting to expansion with the, you know, the journey mapping, et cetera. Are there specific things that you've seen work really well in doing those to drive, like I said, new logos coming in, additional renewals, et cetera? Or does it feel a little bit detached? It's just steps that you're taking to try to get to that point?
For me, we are so early in the journey mapping that we haven't gotten there yet. That's just something that I'm introducing to our team as a strategy that I think we should take next. Mm-hmm. From the squad and trying to retain those clients, we've definitely seen, you know, 4 or 5 major trends in why the usage has gone down. And so now, you know, it's easier to sort of automate how we respond to each one of those, where originally it was a case-by-case basis, right? So if you start to see the same issue come up over and over again, then you can really build a detailed response specifically for that issue and get it in the hands of the teams quicker. So that has come out, you know, for me, but I'd love to hear from the others what they could add to that too.
Yeah, I don't know what anybody else's volume and their total customer bucket looks like. We've done something which isn't really rocket science, but is working. Is we've created a customer success SDR BDR team, which I've termed customer success specialist, and these individuals call into a certain segments of our client base. So we have product that goes into a plan, multi-level plans. So what we've done is segmented our customers to the lowest level of plan, but at a high seat count. And then our customer success specialists engage with those customers and just touch and say, hey, I just want to let you know about, here's our product roadmap going into 2021. Here's some stuff that we've done recently that maybe you don't know about in regards to the additional feature functions that we have. So that's driven a lot of goodness, if nothing, that we're at least reaching out and engaging. They're very shocked. Wow, I've only ever talked to support. I've been a customer for 5 years, and now you're giving me a proactive call. So that's cool. So that's kind of working with it. And then with net new customers that come in that don't hit our high value customer threshold, we're giving them a 45-minute fast track onboarding session. So it's welcome to Pipedrive. Yeah, we have Kanban as our methodology, but let us also introduce you to the first maybe 3 things that you would see in a customer journey that you're going to be seeing as you go through. Here are some best practices. Here are customers that look like you, and here's your self-enablement tools of 1, 2, 3, and 4, and go on from there. So those things have done well. But again, it takes a lot of time. It's very expensive, and so that's not the win. But we also don't have a CS platform. We are a CRM tool, so we've been put back together our own tool to be our CS tool. which has been great because we know the product, but hasn't been. That's what it's built for. So until we spend some real money, that's what we've got.
Well, it seems like you've exercised a lot of tactics that at least will lay the groundwork for that when you get there. So, you know, I think that's good. I love the idea of the fast tracking the onboarding too. You know, I think that, you know, arming or empowering customers with knowledge of how they can succeed the best, because oftentimes it's not always inherent, right? So, great. What about, go ahead, Tiffany.
Oh, my company does something similar with our SDR team, but we focus primarily on very large customers expansions. Like, for example, we work with a large customer, Citibank. There may be 10 other decision makers that could also purchase a certain version of our product. And so we get approval from our main decision maker, that is our customer, at least in the existing contract. We share success criteria. So, hey, this is what another division of yours is having success with. Here are their KPIs. Here are the challenges that we've helped solve for them. And we think we could solve the same problem for your division. And so our SDRs will ultimately book an appointment with the CSM managing the account, or sales. In some instances, we do have a delineation. Sometimes sales will get involved for large expansions, but that's another way that we leveraged really the SDR team to land and expand existing accounts.
That's great. Have you guys encountered anything that you tried that hasn't landed so well? I think sometimes knowing, or maybe, you know, certain things work really well for certain types of clients and maybe not so much for others. I think it's so nice when everything works well, but any encounters with things that maybe seemed like a great idea and hasn't really delivered?
I have another good example, not to keep talking, but we have different product lines, and obviously per product line, there's a different decision maker title. It's a different persona. But we were acquired by a company that was very focused on pushing their main offering to our customers, which really it didn't match with what even their KPIs, anything within their budgets. And needless to say, marketing this offering to them just didn't work. And that's just sort of basic sales 101, but a good example of something that didn't work. Really, regardless of how you're communicating, keeping in mind the persona, sales or pre-sales, is important.
Absolutely. Excellent. What about if we have additional, again, ideas for things that we've used, tactics, et cetera, what's been successful, but if we've kind of covered the gamut on those, we can always come back to it as well. But maybe we can move on to thinking about, you know, how do your companies really help to empower you to drive revenue through existing customers? I mean, obviously some of the tactics that we talked about help that, but are there additional ways that you have really felt like your company has instead of made it maybe difficult or something that you have to brainstorm, these are things that are in place that you feel really help you to do this, to drive the revenue? Any ideas?
I'm kind of driving, but I can talk if hopefully it's not too noisy.
No, it's totally fine.
Okay, so one thing we did was we had account executives who were taking care of both new logos and expansion, and that was not working great because they were more dedicated to new logos. They weren't paying attention to existing customers as much. There was a lot of friction with CSM, so they divided the team into expand and land. So where there was expand AE and a land AE separate. So that started really working great, where there's a lot of synergy working between the account executive and CSM, and also where we also partnered with the solution architect, being in big data, very technical product. So things turned around. So once they started using dedicated expand account executive.
That's great. Yeah, I feel, so I'm at a startup right now. And so very much being at a startup, I wear many hats trying to drive things. So I think it's great to hear that, I think that's part of that empowering, right? Being able to have the right resources and the time to not need to cover up on everything. So if you have people who are specifically dedicated to doing expansion versus specifically dedicated to maintaining, happiness and ensuring that things are being used well at the time, that seems like a great tactic. Great. What about anything that you wish that they had done anything that you've thought of where it's, this is something I really would like to try. I think there were some great tactics that were listed in the book, and we've talked about a lot of those, but any other ideas that have come to mind where you haven't really been able to execute it yet, but something that's been brewing?
So I've been trying to work really closely with our offering management and our development teams and sort of bring them into the fold with our sales and, marketing and CSM teams. It seems like they're very kind of off doing their own thing a lot of times. And, SaaS is newer for IBM. We're typically an on-prem. And so it's more of that like waterfall approach where everything's perfect, and then they roll out a product. And so I'm trying to bring them more into the front, hear what the feedback is from the clients. And so we can, bring out more agile, releases for clients so they can get success quicker and move on to the next, mini release, I guess, if you will. So trying to, I guess, to answer your question, trying to work more cross-functionally with other areas outside of sales, so development and offering, and pull them into, the upfront feedback from the clients.
That's great. Yeah, it reminds me of the quote in one of the previous chapters, but about, you don't build the product, like you start with building the product to solve something instead of just building a product and then figuring out how it fits in this space. So I think those product releases, definitely being able to have that communication factor and letting the product and dev team hear what's maybe not working or what the misses are for the clients is a great way to kind of drive that. And then you get more adoption, right? Because the client's are already looking for that, as opposed to being release something that maybe isn't solving a problem for them.
Right. And specific to COVID, a lot of our clients came forward and said they needed certain things because we are, a supply chain software. And so their business process transformed overnight in many cases. And so having, the offering teams really close to hearing what the top priority was just to get, product out the door, and then being able to execute on that very quickly was obviously will drive retention going down the road as we move forward with them.
So with us being a small company, and to piggyback a little bit off of Cindy, so we did some restructuring, and I've had a lot more say now on the product roadmap, and some of it is because right now, like I said, it's all very new with customer success, and I oversee implementation, customer support, custom development, a lot of hats. But just kind of tying that all in and, being able to, obviously from the customer support perspective, knowing what the issues are and things like that, things that we need to solve within the product roadmap, as well as what are those features that they're not using that, either we can do a little bit better on or we just really don't need. And making sure that the features that we do add are things that are going to add value to existing customers as well as bring in new customers. And so we're working a lot more closely with sales as well. They're telling us, the leads that they're getting. We're doing more custom demos. So, the sales team will come to me and say, hey, I have this customer that this, and this, could we, do something, specifically for them, to demo. And then I'm getting an idea of what customers are looking for, from a new customer's perspective as well. So all just kind of working together to try to drive that growth.
That's great. Jeff, do you have the same experience of being able to have the conversations between, I know obviously you've mentioned kind of being larger. Does that happen within your organization as well? Do you have any influence over the kind of product roadmap and what's being built?
If I flew to our headquarters in Estonia, I'd probably have a better opportunity. No, some of the things that I have done is we communicate to the customer obviously all the time, but so does everyone else, right? So I'm trying to figure out how we either there's this philosophy about building a communications warehouse or clearance house or some sort of stakeholder from every organization, so we all can look at what kind of cadence we have and what we're messaging at what points in time in the customer's life, and so that's one thing to look at and think about. Trying to, in regards to like support engineering and product, attaching very particular product issues to MRR and named accounts, and just giving that base information. We have a platform that records our customer meetings and calls, and so sharing snippets of those calls with product where they have, these are feature ideas, or these are things that we're seeing in the energy market, for example, or large markets or large customers are looking for integrations in this manner, or large team rollouts are looking for, so trying to give them real tangible data that we have is another way that we're trying to go about it. And so what was when we have PMs that get on those webinars or other messaging with our customers, those always have a lot of impact. So, and our customers are always interested in roadmap. So those kind of messaging are very popular.
That's great. I love, Daisy, you mentioned the, being involved in the sales process, and that's something that stood out to me in this particular chapter. Because I have had, in my own experience, back and forth a little bit between our sales team and saying, as a small company leading the customer success team, I'd really like to be part of those sales calls so I hear directly what those problems that they want to solve are. And the hesitancy, I think, is just because we're a small organization. It's not hesitancy. I think it's just people tend to go their own ways at times. But I'd love to know, is that something that's happening for everyone where you are getting involved in the sales process? Is that as common in larger organizations? Is it harder to kind of get in at that point? What does that look like for others?
Well, I've volunteered my time, and I've just went ahead and put a schedule together for the my colleague in sales for North America and Latin America, and I make myself ridiculously available to do that. There's a little bit of hesitancy because, I'm like, if it's 75% then I want to know so I can start to strategize and we can give the customer a good experience, yada, yada. There's a lot of hesitancy on that because if it should fall out for whatever reason, or, the visibility and I don't care. You can't win everyone anyways, but in order to get it, and for the customer, the better that we know what the use cases are coming up. But this is, I come from an enterprise world, and we used to do this stuff all day long for months and on end, and have pre-sales solution architects and the whole works. Not the case here. We lead with product, lead with a freemium, and then go from there. And then the quick and easy that we have is trying to get sales just to give us as much of a data dump as possible in a handover note, and then we will consume that before we try to touch the customer. That's as far as we've gotten. So that's better than nothing. So, we're trying to iterate that, but, but that comes into a whole philosophy then because if you are product led, then and we don't have a CCO and we don't have a chief revenue officer. So we still have the VP of sales and we still have a chief marketing officer and those kind of things. So it's going to take a fundamental shift in the organization to go into a whole, another build, as it were. But that's, we love CS, and that's why we're on this thing in a book club about CS. I mean, only like us are going to do that. So we see this, we get it. It's about trying to drive change while still hitting quarterly objectives. One of my things is we need to get away from MRR and go towards LTV. So, what we're doing in that, and then, what we're doing in regards to that model versus what a quarterly model looks like. So it's a whole other animal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and again with it, well, because my like I said, we do oversee the implementation side of things, but for sales, so we'll do the internal kickoff where we review the SAL, what they think that is an expansion opportunity already, so that we can continue to kind of drive that message of the value of that. And then we have a customer kickoff where basically there's that warm handoff. The sales team says, this is your team. They're going to take care of you, from here on out. And so that's really great because, we also get a chance to figure out, who the champion is and who's going to help, drive this implementation. But, you know, we also get a chance to continue to come with that united message that, you know, we'll do this, but as a phase 2, or, you know, keep thinking about that additional expansion.
I think that's great, setting up the expansion up front. I really love that idea, right? Because as you mentioned, it gives you something to work toward along the way and continue to message around so that there's some consistency in that, in their path. It's wonderful. I know we're, Tiffany, are we supposed to pop back in at 1:45, or?
I want to make sure 3 more minutes left.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. So we have a few more minutes left. What are there other ideas that we haven't been able to surface? Other things that are burning that you'd love to chat about? I know there were a couple of things that I noted from the chapter that were suggestions that they gave for helping to, you know, drive expansion, the logos and renewals. And so I can throw those out, but if you have other ideas as well. I know they had talked about, you know, sharing the customer success stories. I know that that's something that has been kind of consistently mentioned throughout the chapters. I don't know if that's something that you guys have done. Maybe that's happening naturally in the groups or the webinars. Are there other unique ways that you've been able to kind of share stories of others to really, or use your current customers basically and their stories in order to grow things out?
Yeah, I can share a couple of quick things. So what we're doing on the education side is for increase adoption. Our product is, you know, big data. So we turned on hands-on labs, free hands-on labs, so that customers can use for new users onboarding to make it easier. So there's nothing beats hands-on labs than, you know, a webinar even. And also we just introduced a badging program. You can be certified on our platform. So those are all things that helps the customers learn, and also a good marketing opportunity.
I love the idea of becoming certified on the platform.
Yeah,
right?
so there is a distinction. I think certified has more, carries more expectation. Maybe like badging is the new slogan, you know, new word to use. Like, yeah, I get badged. It's lighter, I think. I don't know the distinction as much.
No, I think both are great though. We've talked a lot about that for onboarding through our process, because we've got, you know, a SaaS model as well, but there's a little bit of a learning curve. So trying to figure out how to really encourage, and, you know, Jeff, I think you gave some great techniques earlier also. But yeah, trying to find good ways to almost gamify the process, right? Where you get them to wow really quickly. You get them really excited about doing that training, because training is not always fun.
Yeah, we certainly gamify. I mean, between any long training session, there are quizzes with gift cards thrown in there. Yeah, those are good parts.
That's great. Love it. Excellent. What else? Any last burning kind of ideas that we want to discuss, share? Tiffany, any tactics that you use that we haven't chatted about? Sorry, I've just taken the.
I mean, one thing that we did was after a successful onboarding, and this was for more of a lower ACV, it was more of a long tail approach. After a successful onboarding, we sent them a link, hey, share with a friend and get, you know, access to a certain amount of extra seat licenses. And that was relatively successful to help us onboard other people within their company. It was a seat license basis. It's almost an internal referral program, an internal to really incentivize them to share with a friend if they liked our offering.
I love that. Yeah. Any ways to get people to refer, I think is a great way, whether it be internally or externally, right? Great. Well, it looks like the breakout room is closing in 30 seconds. So I took some notes on some ideas that we all shared. Thank you all for all your fantastic ideas. And I know that Dana will also summarize these so that we all have nice things to kind of take home and see and use and apply as well. Great.
Thank you for moderating.
Thank you all for the great call out. All right, we'll see you in the main room.
Okay, bye, Lauren. So Mark, do you believe that with your product, the ClickFunnels, that their primary outcome is higher revenue, and higher revenue in what way?
I mean, I think that's subjective. It could be different for each person. I mean, some people may just want to replace their current income at their job, and they hate their 9 to 5, and they want to have a business, and maybe that means, depending on where they live in the standard of living, that could be $20,000, that could be $500,000. I mean, that's some people want to make we have people who've made over $100 million using our software, and so it really depends. And that's the tricky part is, if you're selling that vision, that idea to people, like, hey, you can make $1 million. Well, if I don't want to make $1 million, why should I use your software? Why should I drive for this? So that, I think that's, having the smaller levels, it would be helpful there. But I also think, letting them determine what is success to you. And so I was actually just on a call with our COO to talk about, driving customer success forward. So it's kind of serendipitous, but he says, well, we should help them feel successful. And that could be completely different. Maybe someone never makes any money using our software, but they feel successful because they've learned a new skill, and they're progressing, they're learning. So it's really just identifying what makes them feel successful.
Yeah. I would be interested. Whitney, you're new to us, so we're going to put you on the spot. Do you mind introducing yourself? Tell us what company you're with, and then maybe tell us, answer number one, what techniques you use to establish outcomes with clients.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to join late here. My name is Whitney Donahue. I'm a senior client success manager for project management software called Maven. So our software is mainly geared towards helping services organizations provide more seamless delivery of their services, and was particularly interested in this topic because the clients that I work with are typically are larger, more complex enterprise organizations. And this has become a big initiative, both for us and for our clients. And I've been thinking a lot about like the different techniques that could be used to establish key outcomes. And I feel like they're bucketed into different areas. Like there could very much be goals or outcomes around adopting the tool set itself, like they want a certain percentage of users logging in and performing activities. Then there's like departmental goals of, our department's initiative is to, retain employees. They're having problems with retention. And then overall as a company, growth, revenue growth is the outcome that the whole organization is after. So what I've been thinking about employing with my customer base is to kind of break out specific sessions for each of those topics on a regular basis. So a quarterly business review is super common. We probably do a lot of those, but then also having what I've been calling in my head an executive readout to bring it up a higher level. And then also like an adoption review to bring it down like to the lower level so that you kind of get all three.
Great. So to move on to the next question, and David and Jesse, we'll let you guys chime in here. Are there some examples of friction that you've experienced in this process? How do you smooth that along? And customers expect you to be the experts. So how do you get them to pivot in their brain and think outcomes as opposed to usage? Start with David.
Go first.
Yeah,
so in our industry, we're pretty safety oriented. So a lot of the examples of frictions that we experience are adoption of a new mobile app that tracks them and tracks their driving behavior. Not a lot of people like that Big Brother kind of storyline there.
I can see that.
Yep. So we do have a lot of change management issues, a lot of onboarding adoption issues within our market. What I found the best process that we have implemented was ensuring that we have an executive sponsor that's tied to our project that can lead up the executive change top down. And typically that trickle down effect that leads all the way down to managers and really fleet managers at the end of the day has been successful. I think that is the approach that we are going to take as an organization moving forward, because we're data-based and we've seen really a 15 to 20% adoption increase going this route based on our previous pilots.
Interesting. Jesse, some stuff to add?
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, one of the more common friction, areas can be just generating trust from the client. Because I mean, and this is the case for me too. A lot of times, I don't always want to, tell a CSM all of my business goals, and sometimes I just want to do the software myself. If it's not, I mean, if you're talking about like an enterprise ERP. For example, like Maven Link, for example, it may be a bit more involved, but, sometimes, I don't want to, give someone an hour of my time every week to fill out their success card or something like that. So, and I certainly have gotten that from the other end where, they're not necessarily willing to give me all of this insight about, what their internal challenges are going to be, what each department, what each stakeholder's goals are, so I've found that that's kind of been a limiting factor for me. But I feel like a good approach to that is just being patient and earning the trust of your point of contact. Whether it's, I mean, it could literally be as simple as like sending swag and like a postcard or something like that, which I've done this week. So it's on my top of my mind. But yeah, actually it's funny. So my company, we actually have really cool swag. So we have AirPods that are branded. So I just sent those out. I just sent a pair of these out to a client who I couldn't get on the phone after they signed up, is a pretty big account. They signed up and they kind of just went dead. What happened was, like, internally, the project that they were piloting us with is in a little bit of a holding pattern. And the guy was on vacation. So I just had trouble getting the guy on the phone. So literally just used that to get him on the phone, and we were rebooting the conversation. And because of that, he's been giving me a tons of inside information to the workings of the company and what we're up against. And there's an incumbent platform that we're up against internally. So he's now giving me all of that information. So a lot of times it's like kind of breaking through that barrier to get what you need to know to fill out that success card.
Well, I believe that it's important to align on to jointly own those outcomes. And that's what they talk about in the book. It's setting that vision to jointly own those outcomes. And I would agree with you, Jesse. We have a struggle working with nonprofits that they don't want to be that transparent. They don't want to be that open book. But when we can move them that way and really get them to understand that those outcomes will help us help them. I hate that phrase, help me help you, but it really is what it's about. So I'm going to toss it to Jill as we move to the next topic. That we talk in the book, and that can't be measured, can't be repeated. So we want to be looking at prescriptive behaviors. So Jill, Seismic has grown. So I want to talk a little bit about, I've got to assume that your team has adopted some prescriptive behaviors, and curious of how you got there and how do those affect the experience you're having with customers?
Yeah, great questions. So, I think, as we grow our customer base, as we're watching more customer usage trends and gathering the data around what are the outcomes we're looking for, our CSM team is in a better position to be more prescriptive about the outcomes that clients can expect to see. The sales enablement space is even newer than the idea of customer success. And so a lot of clients come to us looking for us to be the experts, not only in our technology, but in the industry of sales enablement. And they're looking for us to say, what should those outcomes be? What outcomes should I be expecting? Because as you mentioned, the outcomes discussed in the sales process aren't always the outcomes that we're seeing with our customers in real life. There is a gap there. So we are living in a space where we absolutely can be prescriptive in what we can expect our clients to see. Some of the ways that we've worked to improve the way that we can be prescriptive are just, as we've grown and as we've scaled, we've done some segmenting of our customer success team. So we can be a little bit more prescriptive within a subset of our client base. So we've segmented industries a little bit. We have a large financial services client base that is very different from what we call our core client base, which is everything else. And so, by dividing those customer success teams, those CSMs can really specialize in knowing the kinds of customers they're working with and the kinds of outcomes that they can prescribe, and the behaviors that lead to those outcomes. I'll stop there. I'm talking a lot.
No, that was great. That was great. And it really opened the door to where I want to go. And I'm going to throw this open to everybody. Because there are some that say you want your CSMs to be subject matter experts. You want them to you fully understand the outcomes of a CFO versus the outcomes of a CMO. And so as we put those prescriptive behaviors together, all the money in the bank doesn't pay for all of this. So how do you take what you can do from a resource standpoint, and where this would be like just perfect? So let's talk a little bit about that, those prescriptive behaviors. How can we get there with limited budgets, and still we got to pay the rent at the end of the day? Mark, you look like you want to talk.
Just kind of listening to everybody. Yeah, I don't know if we have prescriptive behaviors. I think that's part of the reason why I'm here. Like I said, there's different things that we do. I think it was Jesse who said something about shipping out a physical product to somebody or things like that. It made me realize, we actually do, when people sign up, we have a little onboarding in the app that they go through, and if they do, they get we send them a shirt, just reminding me about that. So I mean, there are things that we have done and do like that, right? That I guess would be kind of a prescriptive behavior, but I don't know, for us it's I think we're still at the point where we're trying to get this customer success mentality across the entire organization. We have 350 people in the company, and we're just like, I think there's a couple of people that have that kind of focus, or they think they have that focus, but it's how do we have that focus from the top down?
Yeah.
And like I was telling you, I just had a call to their COO, and he said, well, I mean, if you think about it, everybody's a customer success manager. They just might work on different things, it's having that mentality, because otherwise, if you're not here for customer success, why are we paying you? Like, you're just wasting our time and our money, so.
I would agree. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, at MavenLink, we have this concept of owning the moment when it comes to customers. We, of course, everybody's working more directly with customers than others. We've got the support team that kind of have their moment. We have the product team that's doing their stuff behind the scenes. So the implementation team and all of that. So it's just like the overarching concept of like whatever type of engagement or influence you have with our customers is owning that moment to the best of your ability, and as much as possible. Is also a really interesting notion of like, if it gets to the point where bandwidth is squeezed, but you want CSMs to be more and more prescriptive, but maybe not, you don't have the ability to increase headcount and then take the time to train those people up. What we're thinking about and starting to do a little bit is actually kind of like having cross-functional resources available more regularly. So the solutions engineering team that is typically most active with prospects, bringing them in when the situations call for it, for post-sales solutioning. So that allows you to, not hire a brand new CSM, but, maybe there's somebody on the solution engineer side that has just kind of specialty from past experience in a certain industry that you can bring in for, a short period of time.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I wanted to bring up as an idea on this, and one of the things that we did at Black Bob, was we did a quarterly, we called it the completely just left my mind, the elite team meeting. And it was the way that we pivoted from thinking we were just a customer support organization to success outcomes experience. And what we did was we had product engineering, the sales team, the support team, product marketing team, and everybody was represented in this quarterly meeting. And what they got to hear from the customer success team was the outcomes that were driving customer decisions. And so it's like I said, we were all about fundraising. So it's like, okay, they're making more money, but how do you make more money? We get more people there. We did a lot of we had cancer walks and leukemia runs. So we did all of those things. And what the team didn't realize is that a break in a registration could cost a nonprofit thousands of dollars. And Mark, this is really to your point of helping your company move from this product and we're selling a product to we're creating an experience that leads to outcomes that helps people be successful with their investment. So it really is a change, a transition in the thinking in your business. And it's exciting to see these things moving. That elite team, one of my proudest business moments that over the course of 4 years, we had 100% attendance at that meeting. And people would be like, that's insane. And it was a 3-hour meeting. And people showed up because they love to hear the voice of the customer. And it's really getting that voice of the customer to resonate in your entire organization because it reminds you every day why you're there. Okay, so kind of to wrap up, I think we've got like 5 or 6 more minutes before they'll kick us out of this. Well, actually, before we go back to this bonus question, let's kind of do a round robin and talk about, we want, as he said, the 3 things. We want to set a vision, leverage a methodology. So we didn't talk a lot about leveraging that methodology for achieving that outcome. So let's talk about that just real quick, the methodology. And let's talk to who wants to go first.
Yeah, I think this is very specific to each client. We have a pretty complex software that all of our customers are using in different ways, and so for us, we have a very high touch customer success model for our enterprise and our global clients, and so we have the capacity to dig in and identify what those specific tactics are for each one of our clients and what those specific outcomes are. So, from where I'm sitting, the answer to this question is it depends on which client I'm talking to, to make sure that we're partnering with them to deliver those outcomes. But we're working with them, right immediately, kind of post sales to understand what those outcomes are, making sure we're validating that, using metrics and quarterly business reviews and metrics reviews along the way to ensure that we're all working towards those same outcomes and talking with them about how their business evolves along the way so that we can adjust those outcomes as needed to make sure that we're always, again, kind of partnering together to get to those outcomes.
I'm putting this on the screen because you brought up a point. When we talk about methodologies, there's some trieds and truths, one-to-one, one-to-many, low touch, high touch. So kind of just by raise of hand, how many of you are using like a low touch, high touch model?
A combo.
A combo?
Yeah, we have a combo.
All right, so David, are you are you predominantly high touch because of your business strategies?
Yes, it's predominantly high touch.
Mark, same thing with you guys?
I mean, we are primarily a very low touch because
okay, so you're predominantly low touch.
Yeah.
So they can self-serve mostly.
Mostly, I mean, yeah. Well, support. You know, we have. I mean, our support. We have 150 people in support out of 350 people in the company. So
wow.
You know, but it is. You know, that's reactive, right? We're just responding to.
That's a break fix. How many? What's your ACV? What's your average contract value, Mark?
$100 a month.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whitney, what's your average contract value?
Mine personally is probably in the tens of thousands.
Okay.
But company-wide, we have a huge range of, you know, $100 a month all the way up to the tens of thousands of dollars per month.
Gotcha. Jesse, what's your average contract value?
Yeah, it's also a big range.
Okay.
From probably 1,000 to tens of thousands.
Gotcha. David?
Probably over 5K.
And Jill?
We think of things typically in annual dollars, but about 250K annually, so 20-ish K per month.
Okay, so our annual contract value on our product right now is $7,000. We are an extremely low touch model. In fact, we had hoped for it to be a low touch, but I introduced this whole thing. You can't be low touch if you want to focus on their outcomes. And so that's why I kind of thought it would be interesting to do this round robin. And now on that same thing, what are the challenges that stand in the way of being able to deliver those outcomes? And you know, the question I had said was, you know, it's the difference between delivering those outcomes and just being nice. And you know, Mark, with you got a $1,200 annual contract value, average contract value. And you've got a break fix team. You don't really have a customer success team. What helps you deliver what you would say recurring value to your clients?
That's a tough question.
You can also skip because you've been very honest that you're learning. And to me, that's the shift in the brain. It's like, okay, we can fix your problems here, but can we help you achieve greater success in your business?
I think that's what we're trying to figure out, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think that's what
we've noticed something that's been, since we have such a wide range of clients, we've noticed something that's been resonating really well with our lower touch accounts, and then something that hasn't been as effective for our high touch accounts, which is actually like a one-to-many roadmap or roadmap presentation, or really any type of webinar, which is fascinating to me. Like, I would have thought that would resonate to all of our accounts, no matter what the size, but it seems to be that our low touch accounts that are used to doing more self-serving or don't hear from CSMs quite as often love the webinars. They love to engage with any type of on-demand learning, and our high touch accounts are like completely expecting full white glove, lots of formality around the presentations, lots of like custom content. So that's been interesting.
Yeah. Jesse, Dave?
We're very heavily high touch on the onboarding. It's very technical. So we're very, you know, one-on-one. We do a lot of custom integrations on the front end, and it takes quite a couple of months. So after that, it's for the many clients find it easy to, after that, you're kind of on, they're okay not, you know, being checked in with too much once they get going, because we tend to have like an internal champion who will kind of you know, train new people.
About, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So that's for the most part, I think how we operate, and then we do have some lower smaller package clients, and we're still hands-on with them just because of the nature of our product. We need to be to get them going, but maybe a little simpler, less integrations, things like that.
So Jesse, does your team predominantly do, the adoption, the early stage implementations, or do you own the client past implementation? Just curiosity.
Yeah, no, I think our organization's kind of interesting in that way. So we actually have two separate departments within CS. So we have onboarding, and then my department is everything past onboarding. So
okay, good.
Engagement, adoption, maturity, things like that, and support.
Right. And this is just really a personal curiosity. Do you guys charge for QBRs? Does anybody charge for QBRs?
I've never experienced that.
Who's charging?
Maybe way down the line, perhaps. But,
one of my VPs wants to charge for QBRs, and I'm like, no, we're not charging for QBRs. I forgot, I've got to take my screenshot. So I'm going to take a screenshot and say, all of these people say we do not charge for QBRs. So,
and I'll just put our hands up like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just crazy.
I wouldn't pay for one.
QBRs for all.
Yeah. So anything else I'd like to add to that? And I guess I'm thinking about the question was, between trying to get them to focus on outcomes and the break fix meetings, the QBRs, and then the clients that you've got to get them moving and you've got to stop being nice. So it's breaking that friction and breaking that hold. So they got to get moving, and so any thoughts, methodologies, vision on that? I don't want to leave on that bad note, so let me change the topic because she just told me we're moving. I absolutely love it. And if you haven't read the book, Complexity Avalanche, I give it to every customer success rep that works for me. And I used to be able to get JB Woods. He lives here in Rancho Bernardo. I used to be able to get him to autograph the books, but read that book. Nick has been a voice into power. Thank you all for being here today. And it was great. Great conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back.
Can everybody hear me? Yes?
Yes.
All right. Okay, great. So a couple of things that I want to be able to close this out with that are really important. So don't go anywhere. There's a couple of things that are important to mention. So first, let's see, I want to go to, okay. So first I want to talk about next month's event. So Pulse Local San Diego, they have a monthly call right before ours on Wednesdays. So the one that they're hosting is Manage Re-engagement in the case of customer success turnover. So if you guys are interested in that, be sure to register for that. You can go to this link here or message myself, or Tiffany is on the call as well, so that we can get you registered for that. Second is we've got next month coming up for ours is we're now moving on to part 2. So we finished part 1 of the book. Yay! And so now we're moving on to part 2. There's 3 parts to the book. So what we're going to be covering is chapter 8, It Can't Be Delegated, chapter 9 about product, marketing, and sales. So this is where the really good stuff of the book comes in, where they're showing you how to bake customer success into every part of your business model. So I definitely don't want you guys to miss it. So if you have not done the registration link that's at the top of that chat that we did earlier, So make sure that you, you register for those. And then also think about this while I'm talking. Write down in the chat right now something that was really valuable, like a real solid takeaway that either you felt everybody benefited from that you gave, or that you learned from somebody else, something very specific. Because as I said, we want to promote you. So you could put those in the chat, something really solid that you learned. Please do that right now before we close out. We've got about 6 minutes. So as I'm going through some last minute things, I want to make sure that you guys are putting in there something solid that you really learned that you think our community could really benefit from. So do that. And then for the moderators, if you can tell me while everybody else is doing that, if you can share 1 or 2 takeaways from the group that you felt were really meaningful, I'd like everybody to share that. So, if I could put everybody on the spot, why don't we start with, Tiffany, I think if you want to start, or Laura, or Rick, whoever wants to jump in.
Happy to jump in. So we discussed the topics from chapter 5, and it's all about how to both renewals, expanding logos, etc. And there were some really, really great ideas from our discussion, great shares. So Cindy mentioned that their team, they have a retention squad for their high value customers, which I thought was a super fun name, first of all, but also, it really helps to kind of focus in on helping. I know, Dana, I love your face. You're like, yeah, it's a good term, right? I liked it a lot as well. And then also, Daisy brought up the idea of really needing to be able to work with sales, and then also using potential cases where maybe the product isn't serving the client, using that to help drive product development. So I think we all understand the value of helping with product development, helping serve and solve problems from our clients. There were a lot of really great things. I'll share more details that will come out to all of the group. So.
Great. And then we've got 4 minutes. So 1 minute each. If you guys can, Rick, Tiffany, Cindy, anybody. Any of our moderators want to share?
Well, this is Ed. I can share a couple. We had a great conversation, wonderful group. 2 things came out was when you use logo churn, right, in terms of the metrics. And there was some good discussion about using it for SMBs that may give you information, especially in the early stages, that you may not get from revenue churn. I thought that was cool. And then when we talked about churn reasons and proximate causes, there was a conversation about, what does a CSM really control and influence? And there was kind of a debate about that, the things that were in the book, and taking another look at that saying, well, we probably do have some influence on some of those things.
Awesome. Thank you, Ed.
Hi, this is Debbie again. We had a great group. We talked a lot about the delivering outcomes, who owns those outcomes, how to get the client to align on those outcomes. And depends on them. Big companies, small companies, we've just got to kind of change a way of thinking around those.
Great. Next.
Yeah, this is Cindy. Yeah, this is Cindy. I'll share. So one of the share was from Berto, where I found. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes? It's a little.
Okay, so yeah, so mainly one of the tips is that when you.
No, we can't hear you. You might want to mute. I'll bring up Bertil's. I thought it was really interesting. It needs more discussion. It's a little crazy, but
yes.
He mentioned the key. He mentioned the key words about the ATS for your resume. Putting the key words that are in that job description at the bottom of your resume in white. Apparently, the way that system is read is that it'll be against a white background. So when they get the resume, they won't see that, and you can get through ATS. We have a little more discussion about that, but I thought it was quite creative. And then who else is left from our moderators? Rick, I think.
I was also in Ed's group, and he covered it all. It was a very, very good discussion.
Great, great. And then Debbie, any others that I missed? Debbie, I think you're muted. Did you share?
I already spoke. I shared. Great group.
Great.
Great group. Thank you.
Great. All right, good. Okay, so I think we got everybody, right? And then everybody's been putting in the chat kind of their takeaway. You know, you can see here, we want to make sure that you gain the most value as possible. We're at 12:59, 1 minute to go. So I just want to take a moment to thank you guys for being a part of this. These discussions are nothing without attendance and without people's ideas, without people expressing their challenges. If there was a challenge that was not addressed, I do go through the recordings and I will try and make sure to answer those in the takeaway deck. So be sure to bookmark those links, register, download the takeaway deck from last month, and then in about a week or so, I'll be uploading the new one along with an email to all registered attendees. So thank you guys. See you next month. Bye.